Okay, this will be the final lecture for the digestive system. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the pancreas. So the pancreas is behind the stomach, so it's considered one of our retroperitoneal organs. So it produces enzymes that digest all of these things here, and these are the enzymes that it secretes. It also produces sodium bicarbonate, which helps to buffer the stomach acid, right? We don't want the acid burning through the small intestine. Okay, and then it empties all those things into the small intestine. We don't want the acid burning the small intestine, not the pancreas itself, because food doesn't actually pass through the pancreas. Okay, so it has exocrine and endocrine functions. We already learned about in the endocrine. Those insulin and glucagon, those are secreted by the pancreatic islet cells. The acini are what produce the pancreatic juices. Okay. The ducts then send that things like water and bicarbonate out. Okay. Okay. So these are the enzymes that the pancreas produces. So we have proteases, which help to break down proteins. Amylase, which we saw in the saliva as well, helps to break down carbohydrates. Lipases help to break down lipids even further, right? So they're emulsified by the bile and then broken down even further by lipases. And nucleus, which help to break down nucleic acids. Okay. There's also trypsin. This is a type of protease. So trypsin helps to break down proteins as well. Okay. Okay. So we talked about the hormonal controls of CCK and secretin. So I'm gonna kind of pass over that, but you could look at the picture in the PowerPoint and it goes through it again, but in a nice picture for you. Okay. So small intestine, again, this is the major organ where most of the digestion occurs of these smaller molecules, right? In the stomach, you're digesting like the actual food into more of a liquidy or paste type substance, but in the small intestine, you are breaking down everything else. So these are secreted from the pancreas, and then they're sent to the small intestine to further break down food. So the small intestine is where the majority of digestion and absorption occurs. Okay. Okay, so first part of the small intestine is the duodenum, and it curves around the head of the pancreas. The jejunum is the next section. It's about 8 feet long, whereas the duodenum is only about 10 inches long. So the jejunum is the middle section, and the ileum is the last section, and it joins the large intestine at the ileocecal valve. Okay. So in the small intestine, we have propulsion and we have segmentation. So remember, segmentation was where you have like the mixing. So you have the contractions happening at different, in like the same area at different times to help mix the food together. Okay, so that segmentation happens within the small intestine. Okay, and then peristalsis will send the chyme through the small intestine. Okay, so it completes the digestion of our proteins, carbs, lipids, and nucleic acids from these enzymes made in the pancreas. And it absorbs about 90% of the nutrients and water that pass through the digestive system. The rest of the water is going to be absorbed in the large intestine. Okay, so what makes it so that the small intestine is so good at absorption? So remember I said that they had those circular folds. It's like these folds within the small intestine. Those give greater surface area for the small intestine so that more food can fit into that area and more absorption can occur. They also have villi. Okay, so those large parts that come up, those like finger-like projections that come out, those also increase the surface area, okay? And they have a dense capillary bed and lymphatic capillary called a lacteal for greater absorption as well, okay? And the small intestine is very, very long, right? So there's a lot of time and space for everything to be absorbed as it passes through the small intestine, okay? And then finally they have microvilli. So it gives a fuzzy appearance known as a brush border to the small intestine. And they have enzymes known as brush border enzymes. And these are sent out for final carbohydrate and protein digestion, okay? Okay. So the small intestine also has intestinal crypts. These are tubular glands that are scattered between the villi, okay? And you'll find different cells there. So enterocytes, these are absorptive cells in the villi that help to absorb nutrients, okay? And the crypts will produce intestinal juice and mucus that helps to carry the chyme through the small intestine. Goblet cells secrete mucus. Enteroendocrine cells secrete CCK and secretin. Panneth cells, these secrete secretory cells that help to, they secrete antimicrobial agents, so defensins and lysozymes to help protect the small intestine. And stem cells, so these will keep dividing to produce all of those other cell types that we talked about, okay? You have Peyer's patches, which are the lymphoid nodules, okay, in the lamina propria of the small intestine, okay? And in the submucosa, you have duodenal glands that secrete an alkaline mucus to help further neutralize the acidic chyme from the stomach, okay? And just passing through, we already went over all of this stuff. And we talked about the pH of chyme and its entry into the small intestine already, and segmentation, peristalsis. Okay, so the ileocecal sphincter or valve, this relaxes and lets chyme enter into the large intestine when our gastroiliac reflex is turned on, okay? Gastrin also increases the motility of the ileum. And then it's gonna close when chyme exerts a backward pressure. So when there's enough chyme in the large intestine, it's going to secrete a pressure back onto the valve and it's going to close, okay? Because we have enough at this point, we need to wait for that chyme to move along the large intestine, okay? Then we have the large intestine, so it has Taenia coli. It's these 3 bands of smooth muscle in the muscularis that make these haustra. So they kind of squeeze it together and make these pocket-like sacs that make up the large intestine. And it also has epiploic appendages. These are fat-filled pouches of peritoneum. You don't really need to worry about those. Okay. The cecum, this is the first part of the large intestine. I showed you what it looked like on the model video. The appendix, this has lots of lymphoid tissue, so we talked about the appendix briefly when we went through the lymphatic system. And then the colon, so we have, starting on the right side, ascending, transverse, descending, and then sigmoid colon, and then it goes down into the rectum, and then the anus. Okay. So the anus has 2 sphincters, an internal sphincter and an external sphincter. The internal sphincter is involuntary, so we do not control that one, and the external sphincter is voluntary, so we do control the opening and closing of that sphincter. Okay. And the large intestine is anchored to the posterior abdominal wall by the mesocolon. Okay. So homeostatic imbalance is appendicitis. So this is acute inflammation of the appendix, usually caused by blockage from feces. Okay. And this is very dangerous because if it ruptures, this can cause peritonitis, and it can also help to poison your body. So appendicitis is very serious and needs to be taken care of usually immediately. Okay. So the colon does haustral churning in that haustra, Okay, peristalsis occurs as well, so pushing through of the chyme. And mass peristalsis helps to drive the contents of the colon down into the rectum. Okay, bacteria that are found in the colon help to convert proteins into amino acids, which make up proteins, okay, and break them down and produce B vitamins. Some water, ions, and vitamins are absorbed in the large intestine, but again, most of that is absorbed in the small intestine. The colon also helps to form feces and is for defecation, getting rid of that feces. Okay. Okay, so feces consists of water, inorganic salts, slot off epithelial cells, bacteria, products of bacterial decomposition, and any undigested portions of food. Okay. All right, now let's talk about the defecation reflex. So this is a reflex. So feces is going to move into the rectum, which is right before the anus. So it's like the opening. So we have this here would be the rectum, and then this here would be the anus. Okay, so stretching occurs in the rectum when feces enters into it, and this stimulates stretch receptors in that area, and they are going to send signals to the spinal cord, and then a spinal reflex is initiated. Okay. And that tells it that the parasympathetic motor fibers stimulate contraction of the rectum and the sigmoid colon, okay, and the internal anal sphincter relaxes, okay. And then if it's convenient to defecate, you can voluntarily open up that external anal sphincter, which is made up of skeletal muscle, okay. The internal anal sphincter is made up of smooth muscle because it's not under our control. Okay, and then if that is relaxed, then feces can pass through. Okay, if you have a low fiber diet, this can end up narrowing the colon and cause stronger contractions that increase pressure on the walls, which can result in diverticula, which are herniations in the mucosa. So it's like these little pouches form within the large intestine. So diverticulitis, this is when diverticula become inflamed, and then they can rupture and leak into the peritoneal cavity. So also very dangerous. Okay. Diarrhea, this is watery stool. This results when the large intestine doesn't have enough time to absorb water. Okay, so it can be caused by irritation of the colon by some sort of bacteria. Okay, or from jostling of the digestive viscera. This happens often in marathon runners. And if we have diarrhea for too long, this can cause dehydration because now you're letting go of all the water that you need to actually reabsorb. Okay. Constipation, conversely, this happens when food remains in the colon for extended periods of time and too much water is absorbed. Okay, so the stool becomes hard and difficult to pass. So this could be not enough fluid in the diet or not enough fiber in the diet. Okay, lack of exercise can cause this as well. Okay, lactose intolerance. This is where people do not have the enzyme or do not have enough of the enzyme lactase, so they cannot consume lactose, which is a sugar found in dairy and milk. Okay, so the lactose remains undigested, and this results in diarrhea. Okay, so if you're eating lots of things with dairy and you're having lots of diarrhea, it could potentially be lactose intolerance. Okay. Okay, and then that goes over that. Malabsorption, this can be caused by things that interfere with the delivery of bile or the pancreatic juices. So from a bacterial infection, this can cause a damaged intestinal mucosa and can cause malabsorption. Or celiac disease, this is an autoimmune disease where the immune system reacts to gluten, a protein found in malt, barley, and wheat. Okay, So your immune system attacks your intestinal villi and it causes a blunting of the villi, and then your small intestine cannot absorb nutrients well. Okay, so the treatment for celiac is elimination of gluten from the diet.